You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Boeing, one of Seattle's and Western Washington's longtime employers. Who doesn't want a good, solid Boeing podcast? Probably a lot of people, but especially a lot of folks who have been in business, have been employed in the Seattle area. Boeing has been one of those longtime employers that's always been around, that has gone with the ups and downs of the economy, sometimes creating those ups and downs. Last one out, turn out the lights, 1971. Infamous story. Those were two real estate guys, real estate brokers. And they took out a big billboard sign. Last one out of Seattle, turn out the lights. And 6 months later, Seattle was booming again. Boeing's had this history of up and down, but lately, man, since the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, I did a bunch of Boeing stories about their whole 737 MAX thing. Plane. Okay, we're gonna let it fly. Oh no, you got to ground that bad boy. Testing not good. We're just gonna go. No, you got to ground that. I mean, just a bunch of stuff like that, right? I mean, you had a couple of those planes come out of the sky. Can't really talk about that because that's too tragic, and we can't have tragedy spoken about because life needs to be all like Instagram, where everything is perfect and shiny, and everybody looks great and has awesome outfits on, and people are doing cute things. An airplane falls out of the sky. It's not good. Boeing's no exception. It hammered Boeing. And then we had the whole pandemic. Nobody was flying anywhere, no matter what the plane, right? Got shut down. Boeing, tricky. They make airplanes. They need people flying. There was not a lot of flying going on. All right. Before we jump into, I'm going to talk about a talent exodus from Boeing to some other tech companies, some of them local. Before we jump on in, if you're new here, my name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, and I read the news that reasonable people want to hear. You're reasonable. You're here. Let's do this. Okay. Boeing's turnaround threatened by talent exodus to companies like Amazon and SpaceX. Elon Musk. That guy is a handful, isn't he? I really like him, but at times you're like, okay, Elon, did you need to smoke that fat blunt with Joe Rogan on the podcast? Probably not. But you did it anyway. You suffered the consequences, which was a 5% drop. And then, company, Tesla came right back around. Boeing will put its battered engineering reputation on the line again this week when its Starliner starcraft blasts off from Florida with a load of supplies from the International Space Station. The mission is a do-over of a 2019 trip that almost ended in calamity, and a dress rehearsal for the Boeing's capsule's first flight with astronauts later this year. If successful, it would narrow the gap with ascendant rival SpaceX and answer the latest spacefaring feats by the billionaire founders of Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic. A tour de force by Starliner might also help distract from a potential problem Boeing is facing back on Earth. An exodus of some of the company's most experienced engineers that threatens its rebound from a bruising run that includes the grounding of its 737 MAX air jets after 2 fatal crashes and the plunge in global air travel amid the spread of the coronavirus. It's hard to overestimate the significance of it, said Andrew Aldrin, director of the Aldrin Space Institute at the Florida Institute of Technology. More than 3,200 engineers and technical workers have left the company's Seattle airplane manufacturing hub since the start of last year, about 18% of the union that represents them, with only a scant number added behind. In all, Boeing is aiming to cut 23,000 employees from its executive committee to the factory floor through layoffs, buyouts, and retirement incentives it launched last year as it racked up record financial losses. The engineers departed an employer that had shifted away from the bet the company ethos that gave the world the 747 jumbo jet and the Apollo era's Saturn rocket. Over the past decade, cost-obsessed Boeing executives wowed Wall Street by plowing more than $40 billion with a B into share buybacks. The strategy made Boeing the best performer in the Dow Jones Industrial Average for a span, but left the manufacturer ill-prepared for leaner times and new competitive threats. Now, with the new space age beckoning and aviation beginning to tentatively recover from the pandemic, a century-old company standing as the preeminent American aerospace champion, is in question. Boeing's new chief executive officer, Dave Calhoun, has pledged to return the aviation titan to its roots as an engineering-centric company as he reboots its strategy for an era of loosened pandemic restrictions. There's been a step up in hiring to offset the lost talent and address software shortfalls, but a spate of production defects in the crown jewel 787 Dreamliner has overshadowed that initiative. It seems like everybody's having production. They just can't seem to get their rear in gear. Can't seem to get the required materials to put their stuff together. See it in construction, see it in real estate. We're seeing it in the car industry, seeing it in the computer industry. Just can't get enough of those microchips. I mean, so much of this, and people are trying to get things back going, Boeing included. They've got their crown jewel 787 Dreamliner. Oh, it's just this herky-jerky getting that bad boy going, right? We wonder if Boeing is suffering from an engineering brain drain, as potentially too many senior engineers have left the company in recent years, and recent hiring trends have not filled the gap. This sounds like police anywhere, doesn't it? And this was cautioned by Ron Epstein, an analyst with Bank of America, who was a Boeing scientist earlier in his career. That's an interesting shift. He's an analyst with B of A, and he was a Boeing scientist early in his career. Maybe he's looking to cash in and do a little whatever it is for B of A. That is an interesting switch. The manufacturer shielded its government-funded space and defense units from the payroll purge and continued to hire through the worst of last year's downturn, including engineers. As the 737 MAX was cleared to fly again and air travel rebounded in the U.S., the Chicago-based company pared its job cut targets by at least 3,000 positions, targets that could narrow again as business conditions improve. It held a virtual career fair this month to recruit production and airplane systems engineers to its Seattle facilities. Still, Boeing faces a years-long turnaround and intensified competition in its commercial jet business from arch-rival Airbus, which has built up a commanding sales lead. Do you ever read those stories? Boeing secures 30 jet deal. I do. I think it's interesting. Each order has so much impact, and yet they don't get the orders in there sometimes, or they get the orders in and then something changes. And, you got to retract those orders. There's always this, coming and going because it takes so long for the pipeline for these jets to get built and actually delivered. And I understand a whole bunch of jets out there that are waiting for their microchips or whatever it is that they can't get enough of. With aircraft sales snapping back faster than expected and pressure building to launch a new mid-range jetliner, Boeing will soon find out. Did it cut too deeply? Who knows? And you can second guess that, but at some point in time, you got to make a decision based on the numbers of the pandemic. Who knew how that was going to go? You got to pull the trigger on something. So get in there and do it. Even small businesses like the ones I own had to have that talk at the beginning of the pandemic. All right, here's where we think we sit. Here is option A, we do this. Option B, we do this. Option C, we ignore everything, put our head in the sand, and just go on like usual. I did option B, by the way. It had some provisions, ratchet down some expenses, really take a hard look at the numbers, figure out where you sit. All right, if this is going to be a long one, this isn't going to be good. This is going to leave a mark. This is going to hurt as far as the pandemic goes. But for Boeing, I mean, they've had so many whacks anyway that they got to make a judgment call and go with it. Next section, the pull of competitors. Boeing has lost scores of workers to younger businesses such as Amazon and SpaceX that are pushing technological advances at breakneck speed. I love how we take a really boring subject like aeroflight and we give it some really good wording, and it, technological advances. Oof, that sounds exciting. And they're coming at breakneck speed, not just fast speed, breakneck, whip your neck. Just so damn fast. About 1,100 Boeing alumni now work for the Seattle-based e-commerce giant, an analysis of LinkedIn data shows, because everybody keeps their LinkedIn profiles up to date, right? I have no idea what's even on mine. probably some nonsense from like 25 years ago. Yeah, not that long. LinkedIn hasn't been out there that long. I should probably put my, that I'm a professional YouTuber and podcaster now on LinkedIn, right? Isn't that what you do? I think so. Wonder if I know the login. Don't know. And at least 200 former Boeing workers are on or at Elon Musk's space venture. Microsoft, Northrop Grumman, and Lockheed Martin are also popular landing spots. You were a Boeing employee? Boeing software engineer? Come on over. We've got a job for you. Those who join SpaceX and endure its grueling 20-hour workdays are often driven by idealism, Aldrin said. After all, Musk founded the company with the grandiose goal of establishing interplanetary travel that one day might save the human race. All right. Okay. That's aggressive. Interplanetary travel, save the human race. What else are we doing? With Amazon, the lure is often money. Boeing professionals in the Seattle area can potentially get a significant pay bump without uprooting their families by joining the online retailer, say two people familiar with the matter. No wonder Amazon, like SpaceX, is a new economy wonderkind. And I've had actually a fair number of real estate brokers who do that while simultaneously working in full-time at Amazon and other companies. And they tend to jump around every couple of years because they get a pay bump when they do that, when the market's still hot. As long as there is a lack of workers who can perform their type of work, you can pretty much, make your call and move on. And if you're in sales and sales are going well, might be able to get a bump up from Amazon. Amazon's been hiring Boeing workers with deep operations expertise for the side of its business where humans and robots toil together in giant warehouses. That's not a place I ever want to work. A giant warehouse. Just, ugh. Walt Odisho, for example, had spearheaded efforts to make Boeing's 737 factory more efficient. He retired from Boeing in March and joined Amazon weeks later as a vice president, according to his LinkedIn profile, because everything on LinkedIn is true. Another Boeing veteran, David Carbon, led that company's South Carolina operations and introduced the largest 787 Dreamliner model to the world. That is riveting stuff. These days, he's overseeing the Amazon unit that's creating a fleet of drones to whisk orders to shoppers. Okay, I'm down with that. That's exciting. You ever flown a drone? It's pretty fun. You ever crashed a drone? Not as much fun. How much was that crash cost me? Can you get me some more wings? I need more wings because I crashed my drone and wings. Yes, Sean. I'll tee up an order on Amazon right now. All right, good. That's how that goes with Sean flying the drone. Typically not well. I think I've flown it a handful of times and I don't seem to get the invite anymore, even though it's my drones. You know what I mean? Carbon cheered when a former colleague, Bob Whittington, signed on as Prime Air's vice president of technology and engineering in November. Whittington, who had been the chief engineer for the 787 program, was among the first wave of workers to depart Boeing last year as the pandemic decimated sales. You kind of knew that was coming. Pandemic decimated sales for so many industries and so much small business. Just crazy that we shut the economy down. Don't get me started. He didn't stay retired for long, joining Amazon months later, LinkedIn shows. Bob is a legend in the aviation world, Carbon gushed online of the 33-year Boeing veteran. That and 33 years at your job might get you a gold-plated watch, right? Isn't that how things work now? You used to get a gold-plated watch when you retired. I wonder if I'll get one when I retire. Probably not. All right. In Whittington, Amazon had lured someone who practically had aviation in his veins. His father, also named Bob Whittington, was one of Boeing engineers who had roughed out the design for the B-52 bomber over a weekend in 1948. That's pretty cool. All right. They just sat down at the bar, whipped out some cocktail napkins, rolled those bad boys over, and got out a pencil. And now we have the B-52 bomber. There are a lot of smart people who work here who could choose to make money doing something else, but they love airplanes, the younger Whittington said in a 2013 profile by a company magazine. When an airplane flies over, they all look up. I do too, because I want to hear what that loud, shrieking noise is coming out of the sky. What is that? Oh, yeah, it's another airplane. We must be in the flight zone. Are we in the FHA Flight 1 Zone 1 or FHA Flight Zone 2? Gotta mention that in my report. That's like literally a thing. No fewer than 32 Boeing engineers have landed at Amazon's Prime Air Cargo drone service, most of them hired within the past 2 years. In fact, Amazon overtook Boeing as Washington's largest employer last year as its sales surged, state data shows. I think I did a podcast on that. Probably. Or maybe I thought about it and now things just aren't quite so clear 6 months later. I'm taking credit for a podcast that I didn't do. Either one of those options could be true. Not really sure. There are a tremendous number of opportunities for aerospace, science, robotics, and engineering experts at Prime Air that involve cutting-edge innovations. Spokesperson for the online retailer said in a statement, Amazon declined to make former Boeing executives available for an interview. Uh-oh. Yeah, we don't want the deets getting out on that bad boy, right? I mean, this is some insider gossip. Spill the tea, people. The competition for talent is heating up as the industry adjusts to a pandemic-altered world. Aerospace is heading into a major hiring phase, said Paul Smith, Senior Vice President of Business Development at Peak Technical Staffing, a headhunting firm that specializes in engineering. We're spending more time recruiting for engineering now than we have done previously in those marketplaces because we're really starting to want to steal people. They need some bodies. Can you engineer? Yes, you're hired. Do you have a pulse? Yeah. Do you have a social security number? Bonus. All right, you're on. Monday, we start at 8 a.m. Boeing has notched some wins in the talent wars. In November, it created a new vice president role for Jenna Hoseen, a veteran of SpaceX, Tesla, Google, and most recently, Aurora, a self-driving vehicle company. That's a wide assortment of companies to work for. SpaceX, Tesla, Google, and Aurora, a self-driving vehicle company. I'm not real big on the self-driving vehicles. That doesn't seem right to me. I want a human being who's willing to crash their vehicle. Software design and coding errors have repeatedly led to performance shortfalls, like the faulty system that commanded the 737 MAX to dive. Not good. The KC-46 tanker's fueling glitches and delays to the 777X jet's debut. They also caused the Starliner capsule to miss a rendezvous with the International Space Station on its first flight in 2019. In his new role, Hoseen charts strategy and leads a new centralized engineering unit that helps Boeing's three main divisions develop software embedded in the manufacturer's products. That is something right there, right? What I just said. A lot of stuff going on at Boeing. The turmoil has also been something of a boon for those angling to join Boeing's top engineering ranks. The company has given 264 employees the sought-after designation of Technical Fellow this year. Is that really a thing? You, my fine sir, or my fine young lady, are a Technical Fellow. You get that in your name tag. It's an honor that marks them as a top caliber expert and often means a bump in pay. All right, down with that. Some years only, and I don't know, I know very little about Boeing employment other than what I read in the headlines oftentimes and when I talk to a lot of folks. I have a lot of engineers that email me, people that have been in the business, people that have been in the aerospace industry for years. I don't really know what I'm talking about. I know enough to just be dangerous. So when I make some of these comments, it's because I know a little bit, but not enough to really know the nuances of what we're dealing with here, right? So I'm reading a news story here. Some years, only a dozen or so people make the grade of, and we're talking about technical fellows. The plane maker lost 275 of those specialists in last year's exodus. I had no qualms when I left Boeing this past December after 35 plus years with the company. That's a lot of what I've heard is that people that have been with the company a long time are making some moves because they can, because there's other competitors in that sphere that pay more or have different options, or you can stay here in Seattle, or, numerous things like that. And this is said by Todd Zarfos, a retired engineering vice president. I considered our engineering talent pipeline very robust and something in which I and fellow leaders invested to ensure continuity with the next generation of leaders. Not everyone shares his optimism. The turnover inevitably has meant the loss of some of the knowledge gained through decades of designing and building highly complicated jetliners. I assume they think that they have plans in place to ensure that knowledge isn't lost. Said Ray Goforth, executive director of the union representing Boeing's engineers. I don't have the same confidence. He's saying, hey, we lost a lot of years of experience. I don't think we're going to get that back. And that's something where the newer generation is like, experience? Yeah, whatever. We'll just look it up on YouTube. I mean, that's kind of where we're at, right? And the older generation is like, okay, let's just see how that works out. Don't really want to be on that plane, but you guys keep going, and we'll see how this one goes. Boeing still has a pipeline into the nation's top engineering schools, and the company's name on a resume can open doors, even with its recent travails. The plane maker is among the top 10 largest employers of 2021 Washington State University graduates. The number one destination for this year's class is, who do you think? Amazon. Crazy, right? Amazon. Boeing's talent predicament has been years in the making. Boeing Engineering's union's membership peaked at 23,000 early last decade as the planemaker tackled 787 production snarls while developing new models, including the 737 MAX. It has since tumbled by 38% as management shifted to work to Florida and California. Back in 2014, while Musk's SpaceX was setting its sights on Mars, Boeing focused on cash after then CEO Jim McNerney declared the company was done pursuing the once-in-a-generation moonshots that had long been its hallmark. All right, let's skip down to tough decisions. Boeing has cut deeply into its workforce over the years to survive industry shocks. We all know that one. It's often recalled workers and rehired retirees as consultants when the subsequent recovery left it short-handed. Always hear about that. You want a full-time job? Well, I don't have any of those. I'll take you on as a consultant, though. And then we'll just, our little deal. As soon as we got enough workers, you're out of here. That's just the tendency to lay off too many too soon, said Tom McCarty, a retired engineer and former president of the Society of Professional Engineering Employees in Aerospace and Engineers Union. Aerospace analyst Seth Seifman says the company is still in the early to mid stages of a transition under CEO Calhoun, who took the top job in January 2020 after predecessor Dennis Muhlenberg was pushed out over the 737 MAX debacle. Brian West, a longtime Calhoun lieutenant, is replacing the recently retired Greg Smith as chief financial officer and key architect of Boeing's makeover. All right, so we've got some transition going on here at Boeing. We've also got a bunch of jobs left, but Boeing is competing in the same exact job pool that Amazon and a bunch of these other big tech companies are. And that's a brutal, brutal job pool. There's none of this, I'm going to be at a job for, 10 years, let alone 20 or 30 or have a full career there. Everybody, I think, just knows, you pack your backpack in the beginning of the day, you go to work, you've got your computer. Nobody carries a briefcase anymore because briefcases don't really hold laptops unless you got a really small one. And that makes you important because that means everything you can get done is on a very small laptop. I have a bigger laptop. I need bigger laptops for my stuff, just being able to see, namely, because my eyes aren't that great. And no, I don't qualify for surgery. Corneas are too thin, retinas are too wide, something along those lines. But here's Boeing. They're trying to make a comeback, and they're competing job pool-wise with the likes of Amazon and SpaceX. This isn't surprising at all. I just find it interesting. We'll just have to see. Okay, Boeing, where do you want to end up here? What's the game plan here? So the Starliner is set to dock at the space station for several days before returning to Earth with a landing in western U.S. A drama-free voyage could help restore some of the swagger to a Boeing division that pioneered human spaceflight. For now, SpaceX continues to captivate the next generation of rocket scientists. Aldrin, who is the son of astronaut Buzz Aldrin, estimates that over half of the engineering students he teaches near Florida's Space Coast have their sights set on Musk's venture, not the Boeing. The talent Boeing has lost may come into sharper focus if the company moves ahead with its first all-new jetliner since the 787 Dreamliner debuted nearly 2 decades ago. The prospect of creating one of the most complicated machines on the planet was a reliable lure to engineers in the past. Hey, you get to work on this groundbreaking technology. Who doesn't want to work on that? If that's your thing, And so many are. I'm a real estate guy. That's my thing. I don't understand all this complex stuff in aerospace, let alone just flight in general. Can't imagine putting together the technology to get a heavy metal object up in the air, but people do it. And I sit in those planes, and I'm very glad that I wasn't the one putting that plane together, because it would be a shambles. That wouldn't be good at all. So this is kind of where Boeing sits. Hey, trying to get things going here, trying to get past the whole 737 mess, trying to get past the whole, let's lock everything down, especially Aeroflight, because that transfers the Rona to God knows where. I mean, just everywhere. Ooh, can't have that. No. And as travel continues to expand, we haven't had any real studies that have said, hey, the less you fly people around, the less impact it has on the overall virus numbers, right? That's a thing, right? And that's why we aren't locking down flight, except countries like Australia locking its citizens down heavily for really no reason at all. But that is a totally different story. If you want to look into Australia's numbers, very interesting. That's not a country you want to be in right now. All right, that's it for me on this one. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for being a part of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. I will catch up with you on the next one. Love to have you subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit the like for this video. Helps get the content out there. There's some who say that my content might be getting, not pushed out as much as it might have been at one time. Ooh, he talks about that. That's not good. Yeah. We need to slow that content getting out there. So if you can share it, that helps a lot. Thanks again for being here. We'll talk soon. Until then, stay safe. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.